Biodiversity, incorporating nature and TNFD into your strategy. Just as businesses are coming to terms with TCFD, TNFD has arrived. The Taskforce on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, TNFD, provides a framework for disclosure of nature-related financial information, the ways in which nature risks might impact a business, its assets, suppliers and customers, and the dependencies that business has on nature capital and services to survive. First, let's describe nature. It encompasses everything around us, from the air we breathe to the soil beneath our feet. Nature includes living organisms like plants, animals, including us, humans, and fungi, as well as non-living components like water and air. The concept of natural capital refers to the stock of both renewable and non-renewable resources that benefit businesses and society. It comprises plants, animals, air, water, soils, and minerals that contribute to our well-being and prosperity. Biodiversity refers to the incredible variety of life on Earth. Shockingly, we are witnessing a dangerous decline in biodiversity, with an average population drop of 69% globally in mammals, fish, birds, amphibians, and reptiles since 1970. This figure has been derived from the Living Planet Index database 2022 and has been visually depicted by Professor Miles Richardson's biodiversity stripes. Ecologists are clear that this decline is bringing us to a tipping point on our planet, and the rate of loss of biodiversity has already reached levels which cannot be sustained. Our ecosystems are no longer as resilient, and ecosystem collapse is increasingly likely. Ecosystems are the basis for all our food chains and for the many products that we manufacture and buy. Biodiversity and climate change are also closely interlinked. Loss of biodiversity is a consequence of climate change, and restoration of biodiversity is an important part of mitigating climate change. In fact, it's essential for governments and business to include consideration of biodiversity when implementing measures to meet climate change and net zero goals, as the two are inextricably linked. Fundamentally, almost every business has a direct or indirect link to nature. For example, loss of ecosystems and the resulting decline of pollinators can negatively impact agricultural and food sector businesses, leading to a reduced production and even crop failures. The Taskforce on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, known as TCFD, provides a framework for reporting climate-related financial disclosure. This framework was developed by an international task force across the G20 and has subsequently been adopted into the law of many countries, including the UK and New Zealand. It also features in the regulatory framework in many other countries, including in the EU, Singapore, Japan, Canada, and South Africa. The Taskforce on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, or TNFD, was announced in July 2020 and builds on the existing structure of the TCFD. It uses the same categories of governance, strategy, risk management, and metrics and targets for purposes of reporting on nature-related risks for businesses. This is different to the narrower scope of climate-related financial disclosures which TCFD contemplated. The two frameworks are complementary, and TNFD actively encourages integrated nature-related and climate-related risk management and disclosures. As well as biodiversity loss and dependency on nature, its scope is wide enough to also include areas such as plastic in the oceanic food chain, loss of soil fertility caused by land use change, and air quality. The final version was published in September 2023. As with TCFD, the intention was that the International Sustainability Standard Board, ISSB, standards and guidance will be aligned with the TNFD, leading to a simpler, streamlined approach to assessment and reporting. It is expected that TNFD will be supported globally and the disclosure obligations will be introduced into national disclosure regimes, as TCFD has been. The key differences between TCFD and TNFD include greater emphasis on the location of assets and activities in the TNFD in order to accommodate specific considerations arising from regional or country differences. The TNFD includes nature-related metrics, which are holistic and much more complex than those included in TCFD. And finally, organisations will need to disclose how effective stakeholders are engaged in the assessment of and response to nature-related dependencies, impacts, risks and opportunities. TNFD provides a voluntary approach for scoping which nature-related risks businesses need to focus on for assessment purposes, and this is called LEAP. It stands for Locate, Evaluate, Assess and Prepare. And TNFD includes guidance on the different approaches that organisations can take, depending on whether you're a corporate or a financial institution. The TNFD continues to require examination of the subject's organisation's direct operations, together with their upstream and downstream, and finance impacts and dependencies where relevant. These are all related to the priority areas and reflects the Scope 1, Scope 2 and Scope 3 greenhouse gas emission categorisations associated with TCFD. These are the 4 steps of LEAP. Locate involves determining the location of direct assets and operations, and the location of assets and operations of a value chain. This includes both upstream and downstream and financed activities. Organisations will have to determine the impact on biomes and ecosystems. This means which systems have an interface with activities and the current integrity and importance of the ecosystems at each location. And then we'll have to prioritise according to these assessments. The Science Based Target Network, which is a partner of TNFD, published the world's first science-based corporate targets for nature on the 24th of May 2023. They began with fresh water and land, which will sit along the Science Based Target Initiative's climate targets. Moving on to evaluate. Organisations will have to evaluate business processes at each priority location and analyse dependencies and impacts to determine size and scale of nature impacts in each priority location. Assess. Organisations will have to assess the risks and opportunities for the business, as well as risks, mitigation and opportunity management. Organisations will have to disclose all material risks and opportunity to standards generally, and this is in alignment with TCFD disclosure frameworks. And finally, prepare. This is formed of 2 parts. Part A is to determine strategy and resource allocation as a result of the LEA analysis that has happened in the previous part of the LEAP, and consider how the performance targets will be set and measured. And Part B will be to determine what will be disclosed and the format of that disclosure. So like TCFD, TNFD remains a voluntary disclosure framework unless adopted by individual countries. Also like TCFD, the framework is market-led, science-based and government-supported, and has been developed in an iterative feedback process. So there are great hopes that it will be adopted into national legislation in the same way that TCFD has been, although this integration is sure to face substantial hurdles. Practically, many businesses will already be disclosing under a number of different disclosure frameworks, such as the Global Reporting Initiative and the UN PRI. And these standards may already include provisions on biodiversity, or may be considering updating or including them. It is hoped that they will all be consistent. We can expect some form of TNFD-aligned reporting to become mandatory in the medium term, and similar to the process around integration of TCFD reporting, we'll do well to get ahead of the game. Whilst the framework is familiar and the internal process and governance pathways required to implement these types of reporting enhancements are becoming increasingly well-worn, the skills and expertise required in connection with TNFD will be different to what has gone on before. Businesses will now need to ensure that they have sufficient expertise and capacity in their workforce to consider and analyse nature-related risks in line with TNFD. They will also need to build relationships and engage with upstream, downstream and financed organisations to ensure that those value chain participants understand their own nature-related dependencies and impacts, as well as risks and opportunities. And they will need to encourage the value chain participants to disclose in line with TNFD. Once there is a better understanding of the dependencies, impacts, risks and opportunities, businesses can start to decide on targets and how they will measure progress. Businesses which report under the EU Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive will have separate obligations to make biodiversity-related disclosures. Although harmonisation is at the forefront of people's minds, it remains to be seen whether this will be achieved in practice. Regulatory divergence is complex, but Hogan Lovells is prepared to support you across these evolving needs. Please contact us for advice and support in respect of the implications of biodiversity and TNFD for your business.